Good evening. I'm Jason Tierney, Editor-in-Chief of Dental Sleep Practice at MedMark Media Publication. I want to thank all of you for being here and joining our live presentation with Brett Brocki of N3Sleep. In today's webinar, Brett will be exploring the 7 most common reasons that dentists fail when implementing a sleep medicine program, how to avoid those pitfalls, overcome those obstacles, and identify your first 300 sleep patients. A couple of housekeeping things before we hand it off to Brett, though. I want to invite you all to use the question box down there in the bottom right. You can, in your control panel, you can submit your questions there, and Brett will try to get to all of them today. And then at the end of the webinar, you will get an email, and in that email, it'll have instructions on how you can take a quiz to earn your CE for tonight's presentation. And with that, I want to introduce today's guest, Brett Brocki, founder and CEO of DreamSleep and N3Sleep. Brett's been a longtime friend of mine, and even longer than I've known him. He's been in the dental industry. His mother was the former head dental assistant at Fort Bragg. So Brett's really been involved in dentistry since birth. And Brett has since then been inside thousands of dental practices, civilian, military, private, hospital, and otherwise. Brett has a wealth of experience in a number of different areas. So he's really a very generalized specialist or a specialized generalist with expertise in business, finance, dental, and sleep that really position him with these unique skills to be able to help dentists build an optimum dental sleep practice. He's developed a multidisciplinary team with really equally well-rounded skills so that they can connect dental teams and medical teams to ensure that patients get the best treatment that they hope for and deserve. So really, without any further ado, I'll quit yapping. You're not here to hear me. And I'll hand the baton off to today's expert, Brett Brocki. Brett, take it away.
Hey, thanks, Jason. Thanks for that great intro. I tell you.
One more thing, Brett. And you will be hard pressed to find anyone with more Star Wars paraphernalia than Brett Brocki. And with that, Brett, take it.
True story. Darth Vader. You can't see him, but he's here with me. Jason, thanks again for the introduction. And to everyone out there listening tonight, really appreciate you being able to take some time here to get what we feel is some pretty strong pearls that can help a practice flourish. And generally what I like to do with this presentation is just kind of really address, not talking about all these successful things out of the gate, but really what are the biggest taboo subjects that people have the most pain with inside the industry. You're going to see those. I won't disagree with maybe our viewers tonight. There are probably some others outside of these 7. These were just the primary 7. So I want to be clear about that. And I also want to be clear about where you really should have your first 300 patients coming in from. With that being said, we'll walk through and looking forward to your questions and looking forward to your feedback. So Jason mentioned it pretty accurately. I was born into a military dental family. So one side military, the other side dental, and it allowed me to, stand at attention and get my teeth cleaned every day. So once I got out of the military after a short service stint on an active duty level, I joined a dental group in 1995 and started working to help in dental radiology, imaging, financial assistance, and et cetera. And we started to help practices. So that's been since 1995. I've pretty much been doing that. And in 2013, I was diagnosed, which led me to start finding these things that people are failing at and why their practice. Why couldn't Brett get help? Because I knew thousands of dentists, but I wasn't able to get help. And that started to boil down to what you're going to see tonight. And I was really frustrated knowing all these dentists and everybody was giving me different answers. So let's kind of start with one of the first ones. The first one that's going to work with any group or entity from the outside in is the person that kind of lives and breathes your practice language every day. And that's what I like to, remember, that this key driver of success in your practice is somebody who says, I can own these protocols, doc. I can help us do this. I can track all the patients. I can make sure our team is staying on their points. And I can be your coordinator, your ambassador, there's lots of names people call these folks inside their practices, their go-to person. It's not necessarily the office manager. It's not necessarily, some other people that might seem logical to you at times. This person is kind of oversighting on insurance. They're oversighting a lot of processes, but there's somebody who is your go-to funnel point in your practice, and that could reveal itself over time. What does that mean? Well, these are the things you ask yourself right now. If you're running a sleep practice, or you say you're doing sleep in your dental practice, well, then you should be able to answer these questions like with ease. And you should say that you're getting results. But we're going to find, probably, if we're being honest with ourselves, what every dentist has told me is that somewhere there are gaps, there are cracks, there are blind spots. And let's start with this one. Don't need to read the slide to you, but it's there. Whether it's home sleep testing, paperwork, medical billing, peer reviews, etc., and keeping up with the ledger, etc., through all of this. Somebody has to be able to do that. If it's you, well, this might be you. I don't know. Most dentists think they can do it all. At least from the thousands of offices I've been in. Oh, it's just as easy as putting that appliance in there. Just schedule that test. Just do that. It's a big headache. And it'll be that way until the rest of the country adopts a systematic process. And everybody quite right now is kind of renegade with that systematic process. One guy says this, I do this. One guy says that. I've never heard one that follows it quite the way we do, to the letter that we do, that sees a really good impact of a sleep program in their dental practice. So we want the dentist to focus on the patient. We want the team and the sleep coordinator there to support that dentist and help oversight that process. Okay, keep track of it. Make sure it doesn't fall through the cracks. And those previous questions start to lend to that piece. If this person's in charge, the questions you asked yourself earlier when you saw that previous slide would tell you that they're doing all of these things and they're doing a really good job at it. They're not letting things fall. Okay. Each patient is on a journey to get help. To do that, you have to have somebody who's coordinating the entire practice to make sure that they don't fall out. Okay. That being said, you start to look from the sleep coordinator's role over to the team. So a sleep coordinator says, great, I'm going to be the manager of all of these processes, right? I'm going to make sure Dr. Smith gets what he or she needs. Okay, great. So then he or she starts going to the team members, and they're going, I don't know, I'm scratching my head a little bit. What is this really coming down to? And what is the team actually kind of putting up the hand, if you will? And that's a slide in here, but if teams aren't getting coached properly, and it can't be necessarily the sleep coordinator, because they may have enough just trying to keep it together. They may not be the greatest coach. They may be a systems detailed, task-oriented person that may not be the best with working with this team as a coach. Now you've got a bigger problem. You went to the weekend seminar that you got some great CE at, and you go back with all the bill of goods, the widgets, the tools, but nobody's there every day holding that hand, coaching that team, and you're hoping that your chosen one, your sleep wellness coordinator, your sleep ambassador, is going to be that. But those behaviors that have been predisposed to dentistry also transition over to sleep, and you might take bad habits from dentistry or how you think it should be done, and you try to do it in sleep, and that's where, again, it's not the same. We're talking about a life-saving procedure that the dentist can do versus what teams talk about every day, which are fillings, crowns, veneers, implants. None of those just grab a patient and say, you're going to save my life with that beautiful crown. Okay. So what to say and how to say it, that's such a key in having a really strong team training base, so that no matter where somebody goes in the system, if a patient, if their journey is from the front reception area all the way through and back out of the practice, there's a touch point there with every single person. But if that person doesn't know what to do, they could be standing in the operatory when you're not looking. And this is nervous insecurity right now. That's what this is. And what that does is that leads to somebody doing something instead of action. It's called inaction. And they look for ways to not scream and not do what it takes to get it done, because they're like, I don't know if I'm doing this right. I'm just going to try to weasel my way or weave my way through this thing, guess or juggle or tiptoe, around it. And here's what happens. The dentist is left with all these things kind of flying around. They don't have a sleep wellness coordinator. They don't have a team trained. You don't have everybody on the same page. The dentist is feeling like, this thing's a mess. I went to the training course over the weekend. I had those people at my office one time. I was supposed to do more home sleep testing. The insurance company's driving me crazy. I don't have a system in place. It's a mess. Okay. And they start to give up. I say that the 3 people that we've helped the most in the past, that we've got to be really cognizant that the industry has screamed back to us. All of the folks that are inside this industry that try to help practices, they scream three different things. I either am brand new to sleep. I've never tried. I've tried and I've failed because of these reasons that we're talking about, or I'm the guru of sleep and you can't show me much until they get shown that they're missing things. Okay. It just can't fall on the dentist. And by having that team as part of all of these processes, what you start to hear from a patient's perspective is, hey, these people know what they're doing. They're getting it done. Okay. Well, in order to get them going in your direction, you have to have the buy-in. So first you picked out a person that you might want to try to help manage this process. Then you look at your team and you're trying to display leadership and say, we're going to do this. They're looking at misdirection everywhere because it's inorganized. And they go, man, I don't know if I believe in this. I don't have a buy-in, right? What does this sound like to them? It sounds like Dr. Smith went out to the weekend, had a great time in Cabo or Florida or someplace, had drinks, dinner with these people, bought this expensive package. We have these devices here. We have this stuff here, this software. We have this new billing company. And this is what the doctor hears, the dentist hears this. And I'm looking at a separate screen, guys, so I can explain this stuff to you. But here we go again. What did the dentist do? There's nothing in it for me. That's another big one. I've heard from team members who don't want to say this to the dentist. No dentist may ever hear these things. But we know they occur, right? And I know I've seen this face in a few offices, which means this is somebody who truly is like, whatever. And that's the look you're seeing on the screen right now. Okay. But here's what must happen. From the top down, it can't be just the dentist and the sleep wellness coordinator. The team has to understand that they are saving lives and they're adding years to people's lives. And that, sometimes it's the people they care about the most that does it for them to get that buy-in. And we work with teams all the time that we get them tested, we get their spouses, their significant others. And I can tell you, every office I've been in where there's a story, it's unbelievable how many comorbidities, how many diseases are attached back to this. And the aha light starts to go off for these dental team members who really never thought of sleep in this way before. They just said, oh, it was a course. Oh, it was a thing that the doctor signed up to. But in actuality, they now start to see, wait a second, this guy's telling me something that really hits home with me. My child has ADHD. Has he ever been tested for sleep? So forth. So they got to have a reason to buy in, and most people have a personal story connected back to it. Sometimes it's the dentist, sometimes it is this wellness coordinator, and sometimes it's each and every one of them knows somebody and they get involved and they go forward. All right. So here we go. The whole team buys in. You got a manager to help you, really manage the process, and you've got the team trained, let's just say. But then all of a sudden, they've got all these patients and screening, it's not yielding any results. And if you notice, and one of the examples is, I mean, if I were a patient here with this clipboard and this person that close to me, I may not respond depending on my personality. So we start to get into where does this go wrong when inconsistent screening is occurring in a practice? Why do we help people with that? Isn't it as simple as just handing them a clipboard or a screener? You would think, but if that were the case, guys, everybody out there would be doing this, but they're not. And the most common thing we hear from dentists is triggering patients at the front end is absolutely the key to a successful program. And we've not seen one program out there that we've walked into that has got this put together the right way. There's lots of reasons that inconsistent screening can occur. Generally, these flush themselves out in the training if it's properly done, and it allows you to get that consistency that you need in screening. Okay, but if you don't, now this could be a good sign to some dentists that there are no patients in the waiting room because they get everybody to the chair so fast, but it's another sign of what we're using it here for, and that is real point blank, is that if you're not doing consistent screening, that equals not enough testing, that equals not enough patients to treat, and not enough lives to save. And that's what we're trying to do here. I think everyone would agree that that's the right thing. Well, what that ends up happening, it starts to create dissension. It makes you think you've done everything you could. You start to give up. You start to say, why am I even doing this? And you start thinking you're crazy for trying it because you've done all these steps. You've bought all the gear, but you're not getting anywhere with it. You've treated 10 patients in 1 year, or 20 or 30, and you have a patient base of 2,000, right? What that should really narrow and boil down to, without, again, reading all of this on the screen, is 1 in 5, we all know. That's the regular stat that's out there. But when a practice is really doing this correctly, they're getting a 10-3-1 ratio. That's a real ratio I've witnessed with just about anything. And you can statistically say that out of every 10 patients you screen for sleep apnea, at minimum 3 will show signs and give you inclinations as to getting tested and so forth. And then provided you've done that, you're able to get at least 1 patient to move forward with treatment. So you can easily say to yourself, at 2,000 patients, if you were just to take 10% right there, easily that's 200 patients if you're providing this service the proper way. That's a consistent screening process. Okay. Moving into our next area here, poor case presentation. So we've got our team trained, we've got a manager, we've got buy-in from the team. We feel like they're really engaging their audiences when it comes to screening, using that 10-3-1 ratio, if you will. But now all of a sudden, you've got patients who are flying in the door. They have apnea. They want to get help. They want you to help them. But then all of a sudden, they go, wait, stop. I can't afford that. I don't know if this will work. My husband or wife, I need to speak with them, or my significant other. This sounds like everything else that I have heard you guys talk about when it comes to all this other stuff. Why should I do this? So the problem here is ineffective case presentation yields people who actually need help, and they won't do it because they're not thinking of it as something that you've presented the way you've presented it. And when that happens, it's a little bit different. You know, when you have severe pain like a root canal, the urgency of that situation is them screaming, hey, wait, I need help right now, right? They get behind that notion, if you will. But if the dentist or their team in that training, they got all that technical and academia training, don't have the verbal and behavioral skills to clearly, effectively communicate to patients. Well, now what you're talking about is patients who just think this is like everything else. And if you can't speak clearly to them about untreated OSA and show them how it's affecting their life specifically, you're going to be sincere in your efforts, but come up short on results. And I see that quite often. I see these objections that you see up here on the screen. I'll think about it. No thanks, not today. If your patient's saying these things, then they don't take it seriously. You have not struck the right chord with that patient. They don't know they're in danger. They don't know, like I knew, that I was about to die. My heart rate shouldn't be out of control. I shouldn't, stop breathing every hour 36 times. That's not normal. And so what's happened is the benefits haven't been explained to them, nor has the risk in a proper way that they've engaged and been part of. Okay. So now let's just say we get past those. Let's say you've done a great job there. I think most of the audience will concur that there's blind spots they've already identified. Just by listening to this webinar, they've heard some things that might sound very familiar to them. Okay. So number 6, this is probably one of the biggest talked about subjects is, okay, Brett, you helped me fix all that other stuff, but I just can't get paid. These medical insurance companies are denying me, or these physicians won't write the prescriptions, or on and on and on we go. And my people don't know how to do billing. And this is how I've seen dentists look at me. And I hope you can see that face. It's a face of, hey, this is crazy. So your patients look at this in a different way though, right? It's from the end user's experience that we try to help you put yourself in the shoes of. Why? I didn't even know you could bill for my medical insurance. Or, well, gosh, that's not covered under my insurance. I have to still pay my deductible. How am I going to deal with that? And a slew of others. So what ends up happening is the dentist thinks it takes longer, they don't get paid as much, they might as well try to turn this into a cash basis or not do it all. It's a waste of time. Should they go in network? Should they be out of network? If I work with a third-party biller, don't they take my money? And again, this halts the whole process. Any one of these could halt the process in a dental practice. It could stop and say, this is why I failed. And you could take any of these reasons and say, this is why you stopped doing it with that person or this period of your practice, or you find a reason why that you say it doesn't work. Okay. So when you don't have somebody helping you with these issues, you want to have, you're going to not see results. When you have somebody who's walking with you every single day of the week that you're open, and you've got somebody that strong to help you, I think you can't fail unless you just flat out aren't willing to do any of the work. And I say it pretty candidly. The accountability happens when the teams who are getting shown this stuff can actually perform it if it's been shown properly. And the other side is who's showing it and what real life experiences they're bringing to this. And what do they see every single day, week in, week out? Understanding medical insurance, anybody can learn it that's in a dental practice. With help. Submitting and appealing claims, again, same thing. How to discuss out-of-pocket expenses. How to discuss that $1,500 deductible, that $2,500 deductible, the $5,000 deductible I've seen. How do you do that on January 2nd when you got a patient in front of you who wants help? You've done a great job. Now all of a sudden you got to get them over this hump. And why third-party billers are key to this, and when to go in network, when to stay out of network. Knowing those, navigating these roads will eliminate this pitfall and this way of failure. Okay, the 6th way we call it, medical billing, right? So, so now that we've gone through 6 points of failure and say that you've tackled most of those, there's the 7th. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, there's probably more, but this one we hear a lot, and that is, I just don't get physician relationships, Brett. I've got the insurance down. I've got a really strong, well-trained team. They've engaged patients. Look how many tests we've done. look at all the stuff we've done, and they're in the right ballpark, but they can't seem to get outside of the dental practice and develop a physician relationship with someone. So what they commonly hear or say to us is, hey, they'll take my patients from me. They'll put them on CPAP when they shouldn't be on CPAP. I mean, they sent them to another provider, for God's sake, somebody else they do work with. And they told the patient that I didn't know what I was doing, et cetera, et cetera. You know, and I don't have a collaborative relationship with these folks. So when we hear that, generally what I'll do is check the practice, kind of measure and gauge where they are. And if it's indeed a fact that they have most of that stuff on the front end squared away, then I go and look at how they tried to develop those relationships in the past and saw what doesn't work and what does work. And we've got firsthand experience of helping people build their business with a solid referral network, a patient-centric hub of physicians and dentists that work together. It's not unrealistic to have that, but there is some work involved on the front end by the dentist and by someone who's developing those relationships out there already with physicians to help the dentist get them. And that, you know, that's what's happened. Sometimes the physician seems to think that, you know, the dentist isn't well trained, or they're not getting the message that you truly are being patient-centric, and how to view cases when they're CPAP compliant or non-compliant, where they're falling through the cracks. Most of the MDs that we speak with, we hear a very high percentage of them, with the right questions asked, we find where their patients fall through the cracks, and we find how we can mend and fuse relationships with dentists to them that make a lot of sense to them, that they basically shut the door on before. Case in point, we have a dentist who, he had been practicing dental sleep medicine for 17 years, diplomated, and he basically had went to 33 physicians' offices, and he only had one relationship, and he did everything right. I mean, he brought in case notes, his credentials, referral pads, bottom lunch, you name it. Why couldn't he get the relationships? We picked up that phone and were able to talk with these same physicians, and in a very short period, 6 to 8 months worth of time, garnered 8 to 10 new relationships of referrals for him from the same people that shut the door in his face. Why is that? We've had great success in connecting with them about this patient-centric idea, and that we also are a neutral third party in this. We're really just trying to create awareness, and we don't even we don't approach them the way the dentists approach them. And I've listened to a lot of webinars. This is some of the good stuff that we know works, because I've done all those other things too, thousands of times, trying to yield out of all the stuff what happens, the process. So the 7 points that we've just covered and how to fix them, they're listed here in consecutive order that we spoke of them. Getting the right team member, getting the right team trained, educating your team on who and how why they should be buying in, and how they can help people and why they should help people, how to be consistent about it, how it's an actual fact that it's not going to change. You're going to keep screening, we're going to keep testing, and we're going to keep treating. Getting your case made so that the patient moves forward with it, one of the big ones. Making sure you're learning how to medically bill with experts helping you and navigating that every day. That's probably some of the biggest pieces, is having a hand-holding technique through all of this. And then you start to get the icing on the cake, and that is those physicians, okay? So when you had those 7 points really ironed out, say you have some other ones maybe not going so well, where are you going to get your first 300 patients? Well, we have to make sure we find who they are. And we talked a little bit about the 10-3-1 ratio, and this is just using the 1 in 5 example. We already know these things. You know what or you may not know if you're watching this webinar, but these are things that you should be looking for. The ADA says so too. It's not just me, But an average well-run practice, we've done the stats across the country, they can produce anywhere from 750 to 1.1 million a year with 1,500 patients in their practice. Well, if we take the example that we listed here, the 1 in 5, that means 1,500 divided by 5 is 300 sleep patients that are probably there, and even more so depending on your patient base. Well, the stats we looked across right now, most practices, if you had to take a real average of how many patients are in each practice, the number's right around 1,500 to 1,700. What I see every day is about 2,000 to 3,000, but I do run across some that say they have 900 here, 1,200 here, 1,500 here. That's okay. You still have plenty of patients that need help because it's the human population here in the United States and globally. This is a global issue. But you have to be able to identify them. You have to be able to have your team on board. You have to be able to do these things that we just talked about. You have to make sure your team is screening every patient, not just in hygiene. You have to be sure that someone is helping you manage this on boots on the ground. You have to make sure that the team knows, everybody knows their role and they're involved in it. And when you've worked that hard to get a patient to the consult level, you have to know how to communicate. And you can't just be how you communicate as a dentist in the past, because patients maybe just did everything you told them chair side. Then you can grow your team from there. To medical billing will come as part of this, and you will eventually be able to get to a solid physician network if you're doing these things. So in wrap up, go help some people and save some lives. I'm going to open this up for questions, but these patients are sitting in your practice right now, and there's a way to get help for your practice to identify them, get them screened, get them tested, get your team right, and get those relationships you need to medically bill and to grow your practice. All right. So I'll leave the last screen up, and I'll go back to our host with the
Thanks,
most.
Brett. Appreciate your presentation. Your passion and sincerity are palpable. I can feel them through the screen.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. We do have a number of questions that have come through. They're actually continuing to come through, so we're going to get to those. But I just want to remind everyone that we do have a little bit more time. If you keep putting your questions in to the question box on your control panel, we'll try to get to all of them. Whichever Brett doesn't get to during the broadcast, we'll try to follow up with you via email. So quickly, Brett, before we jump into the questions, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
How often do you shave your head?
Once a week.
You must have done it today, because you're glistening, buddy.
I'm not actually. It's here. If I can get close to the mic, listen.
That's a 3-day stumble.
It is.
Yeah. All right. So you talked a lot about the importance of a sleep coordinator, and that's something that I've seen many practices fail again and again because they don't identify that person. My question for you is summarizing a question that came through. I mean, who is this person? Are they a hygienist? Is it an assistant? Is it an existing employee? Do you have to hire someone new? Who is this person?
This is a person who is very well organized, detail oriented. They're ready to process new content and knowledge. They're hungry for growth. It's generally somebody who works there at the practice instead of from the outside, and they've taken on that extra onus, that extra weight to say, I can learn this, and they can still be effective in whatever else they're doing, and help the sleep practice. Now, if it's somebody, if you have nobody like that in your practice, no one who's able to fit in any of those categories as a well-rounded candidate, then you have to go to the outside, and usually outside is not going to have any of the knowledge possession of sleep. they'll have maybe these skills, but they could be brand new to dentistry and have those skills too. So I've seen that. Now, there's a pro and a con. Yes, you're teaching them, but they're teachable, right? So organized, detailed, willingness, passion, and generally speaking, Jason, it could fall into, I'd say it could be a hygienist, it could be a dental assistant. I have seen office managers, I've seen the front business team personnel who aren't any of those. They're just, they're coordinating patient appointments, they're calling dental insurance companies, they're administrative at the front desk area. Those sometimes a random person will appear, but there is a way to identify them, and you'll find that sometimes they come from those other sources.
So this should be someone that takes initiative, that puts the onus on themselves to continually learn. Ideally, it's someone from inside the practice, but not necessary. And they've got to be organized and focused on details.
That's right. Fair enough.
Cool. And so you find that person, you put them in this position as sleep coordinator, and you touched on this during the presentation that sometimes maybe there's some pushback, some friction, a lack of buy-in. So the question is, if everyone on the team isn't screening, what can I do to motivate them? Do I give them bonuses? What should I do?
Well, Jason, I ask a pretty harsh question sometimes to everybody that's standing in front of me in these teams, and I'm going to just say it to you.
What do you weigh?
No, that's you're going for blood then, but this is here you go. You ready? I go, how many of you have Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter friends? And everybody raises their hand generally. And I go, how many of you have 150 or more connections? Oh God, I got 300, 500, I got 1,000, right? The next question I ask is, how many funerals would you go to if they died? And the answer usually is 10 to 20. That's the real answer, right? We're connected to a lot of people. But how many people know Jason Tierney from his personal life can actually help save their life? And the dental assistants and the dental team members, to get that buy-in, right, to get that motivation going, it's not necessarily the bonus dollars. That does it for some. But they also look and they realize, wait a second, my son, my mom, my brother, my sister, my cousin, my friend, all of a sudden, it strikes a chord with them about, wait a second, I care about these people and I don't want them to die. How do I get involved in this better as my job in the practice? And now you start to see teams come together. That's just one example, though. We teach them, we have about 12 to 15 different ways under each one of those categories that we implement a system. And it starts to get rid of, so if there's friction, right? If you've got, I'm going to use two fictitious names here, Brenda and Susie. I'm going to just say hated each other. Brenda had been at the practice 20 years. Susie came in. She was 5+ years experience dental assisting, very sharp, very organized. And Brenda was in line for promotion to move up to the front. But Brenda ended up having to stay as the main assistant, and Susie got the job over there, and they had to work together. And when the sleep practice was going to be implemented, Susie, the brand new girl, was looked at and frowned upon by Brenda. And Brenda kind of huddled with two other coworkers, and all of a sudden you had Brenda, Janice, and Sally who hated Susie, and Susie only had one friend, which was Sarah, and Sarah was just kind of easygoing, and so she was easily to take under the wing, and Susie needed to feel like she had somebody on her team. Dr. Smith was unaware of all of this, had no idea why Susie's lunch kept getting trampled in the refrigerator, and that her purse was always jostled around and turned upside down in the locker, and there was friction in the practice.
Yeah.
We had to eliminate that to get them to work together, to screen together, to motivate together, to help more people. That's crazy.
So it becomes much more, if you can really tap in where it resonates on a human level, a lot of that mutinous dissent that you're talking about goes away, because we're humans. We just really want to help other people.
Isn't that something? Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Got it.
That's it. That's really what it is. They got to find a connection point. And there's lots of ways to do that, but it is different. what might be a connection point for Jason on one level might not be the same for Brett on another. That's just a fact of life. But we got to figure those things out. And we can do that through good communication between our team. But this also goes into a leadership piece that most of the time the dentist acumen for leadership hasn't been really given to them through dental school. So they got to feel their way through it. Go ahead.
Actually, let me pause you there for just one quick sec, if I may, because I think that that ties into a question. I'm going to skip ahead a couple of questions, but I think that that would be a good bridge. I think the question is, how can I meet more physicians? Mm-hmm. And you talked about this in the presentation. You talked about how your team was able to go out and forge some of those relationships where maybe the dentist hadn't been as successful. But now you're talking about leadership. So how can you use leadership to bridge that communication divide between dentist and team, dentist and patient, dentist and physician?
Well, and there's an order to that. Before you go to a physician, Jason, if you were running a practice, I'd ask you the same question I ask every dentist. Ready? You took a course, let's just say you've diplomated even with the AADSM, or you've diplomated with the ACSTD, you've done 20 to 40 cases, let's just say. Your team knows how to talk about this. They've been doing this now for 3 to 5 years. They're in network with some insurances, and they're out of network with others. And the phones start ringing off the hook because 10 physicians start referring in patients. Is that team confident enough, set up, well-connected enough in the know-how of bringing a patient from an outside source through that whole process with flawless execution? That is yet to be seen in any practice I've walked into. So when they say to me, I want this physician relationship, I say to them, show me where you are so we can see if you know how to drive this Ferrari you want to get in.
It's interesting you're talking about this. I was having a conversation with someone the other day about external marketing for a dental sleep practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
They want to do billboards or direct mail or whatever it might be, right?
Right.
And my question to them was, they're relatively new to sleep. What are you going to do with those patients when they show up? Let's say your phone rings off the hook. You get 50 calls tomorrow. You're not going to know how to manage those patients. You don't have a reproducible, repeatable protocol, system of workflow in place. And what I'm hearing from you is it's really similar with physician referrals. I imagine you've got to know how to bi-directional communication with them. You have to know what type of information they want from the practice.
Right.
When do they want a titration study conducted?
Oh, yeah.
What kind of documentation do they want to see?
You're on it. And then, I mean, there's 20, 30 other things because one physician.
Give me two of them. Give me 2 other things.
Well, a pulmonologist might want to know about, lung and heart issues. I mean, you start getting into the specialty of the practice and what they really are concerned with looking. Neurological folks might say, I want to know all about that TMD and that joint. What's going on? Wait a second, have you checked? They're not asking the dentist, have you checked the cant of the bite, whether the occlusion is, it goes in a myriad of algorithmic schematics that are like living up in my head that I've watched play out like a motherboard on a multi-sets computers all across the Chinese chipland manufacturing plants.
So you've got all this information because you've seen this in all these practices across the country. So you've got this sort of tribal knowledge that you've embedded in your DNA.
Great words,
How are you able to, you and your team, able to articulate this information, share this knowledge, this wisdom with interested dentists?
I call it it's like an algorithmic matrix overlay to their practice. So every one of the practices I walk into, I can algorithmically see where every line's going and where it's falling short. And I do that by walking through there as a patient.
And what does that mean? Tell me what that means.
Sight, smell, sound, touch, every physiological factor that a patient makes a decision, because we're calling them patients, but you said it, they're humans.
Yeah.
And why do humans buy and participate in things? Why do we make decisions? We're down to a raw root cause. So if I'm able to walk in and show you how to connect with patients on a physiological appealing level, then what's going to happen is you're going to have more patients apt to listen to you, connect with you, engage with you, and move forward with things, especially when there's less and less doubt. That's a trust that they make a decision about. But if you've created so many ways for them to distrust you, well, here, Jason, if ineffective case presentation, let's offer up one of the areas there, just one. You're inside of a consult and we have silence. And somebody outside is walking by that consult room and they laugh because they're sharing a joke. Brenda and Susie are. And now you were just asked, do you understand about the severity of this disease that you have? And you hear them laugh and all of a sudden you go, you know, maybe this isn't so important.
Sure.
I've watched it happen. Something that simple takes a patient off the rails.
Sure.
So we set a stage, and I want you to think of this, Jason, too. Forget the overlay example. I'll just say it's like a movie I've watched played out 1,000 times. I know now the perfect line delivery at the right time when you're with that patient chairside, at what distance, at posture level, I mean, everything of how it can play out to your best favorable outcome. And that's the part that just was monotonous and crazy to me. For the first proof of concepting for this was 9,000 patients we went through before this schematic became available to me to understand it. And it was so physiological, it was incredible.
Got it. So I'm going to take us on what might seem like a little bit of a tangent here. You mentioned TMD, TMJ earlier, and there was a question about whether or not you have to have a CBCT to effectively treat sleep. Do you have to buy a CBCT unit?
I think you have to have one for dentistry, for God's sakes.
Okay.
Well, I mean, listen, we know you cannot diagnose sleep apnea from a cone. I'm a certified radiology technician, so I get to share my opinion on this pretty strongly. Having known, and I've read some great forums out there by some of our peers and colleagues, Jason, and you know who I'm speaking of. We can't definitively determine you have apnea from a CBCT. So let me be clear about that. You do not have to have one for sleep apnea. However, on the other hand, why would you not have one for everything, including sleep apnea? Because if you're looking at a two-dimensional radiograph, Pano or Ceph, you can't definitively tell me the buccal lingual aspects of thickness millimeter-wise. You can't tell me that you see every possible thing on that radiograph that's available to you. With the 3D machine, you get the entire blueprint of the house instead of just the fancy architect picture drawing. Okay, you might know where the back.
As there's more and more emphasis placed on the importance of nasal patency, I could see where it would be particularly beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, Jason, I think I've run the numbers. When 20 years ago, when cone beam and 3Ds first hit the market for dentistry, they were $500,000. You can get one now for $55,000. Okay, and financed over a period of time with tax deductions and depreciations and everything all in. And it takes literally a rotation of either 100 pans at $110 each, or 25 to 55 sleep cases, which yielded not only the sleep but potentially other dental. I mean, I can slice, no pun intended.
Yeah.
I could slice the way you.
Your screen was voxelating.
Why are we not? I mean, serious. Like, radiology was my start in dental, and I'm just flabbergasted that we as a country have not adopted the best visible standard of viewing a patient's potential diagnostics in all capacities of dentistry as a population, because we haven't been required to. It's just like I know people who are still using wet film, E and D speed and F speed film without digital X-ray. I'm just going, why?
Yep. So this is an interesting one to me, Brett. I've had conversations with many dentists and a lot of seminars over the years. And when you ask dentists why they treat sleep apnea or why they're interested in treating sleep apnea, they cite a lot of really honorable reasons.
Mm-hmm.
When I provide comprehensive care, it's the standard of care in my practice. I care about my patients. I'm already in the oral cavity, so I can see the airway. It just makes sense. And rarely will anyone ever cite the increased production, right? But what I've also at the same time seen over the years is the reason that so many dentists bail on providing dental sleep treatment is because it hasn't been particularly profitable. So my question to you, you talked about billing a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
fee for service, third party biller, train an internal team member to manage the billing. What is really the best way to manage that in a successful practice?
Yep, it's 3 stages: crawl, walk, then run. And so the crawl stage is be humble enough to admit,
But not run in the opposite direction, right?
right, great one. That's right. Yeah, run in the right direction. Listen, Jason, I'm like you. Everything you just said resonates very strongly. I've heard and seen it a million times, but after I ask these questions, I generally find where they're going wrong. And I'm going to say it's usually in one of 3 stages: crawl, walk, and run. So what do I mean by crawl? That means that you and your team are willing to let someone show you what you think you know, what you don't know. Just be humble enough and stop and go backwards, take a step back and learn what is medical billing for dentistry, and start it there, because everybody knows how to do it supposedly. I crawl. So in other words, back up, get down on your hands and knees, crawl slowly, and then after initial staging and demographics are configured, and you've got some good population to work with, and you've seen who denies, who's this, who's in, why should I be in network, why should I not mess with Medicare, why should I? You can start making some really good decisions. You can stand up and you can walk, okay, knowing you've got some definitive steps to go forward with. And that may mean, so the crawl stage may mean, I'm going to let this third party biller tell me and let them work with me. They really know their stuff. They're going to hold my hand every day. I'm going to learn some of this, and I may not need them for all my claims in the future. That's a reality. But then I may need them for some as well. So it's kind of that's the crawl stage. You're a baby. You're learning. You must learn. You must learn at that level first. And regardless, the ones I walked into, so I've been medical billing since dentistry was allowed to. And I still find them making classic rudimentary mistakes because they were never shown, and they said they knew it all. So again, crawl, get the basics under your practice. I can't tell you how much this crawl stage is so important. Jason, in Scottsdale, Arizona versus Leesburg, Virginia, do you think that there might be different insurances in those places with different population processes and the whole nine?
Well,
do you think?
Sure. It's going to depend
Right.
on employment hubs and a number of different things like that, right?
Watch this. So 20 of us dentists from around the country just attended this webinar, but one's in Omaha, one's over here in Seattle, this one's over here in Dallas. Here we go. And they all go, well, what's the answer? What's different in every city? And nobody's told them that yet. But in that crawl stage, I can show you how we can make sure and carve out where you sit, all right, and why that's important. That's a crawl learning stage. Then you can walk. When I say walk, that means you definitively every time start to know A, B, and C, these 3 insurances, I always got to do this. And D, E, and F, I always got to do this. And what happens is you learn that in the crawl stage, but now you can walk with confidence in that second stage. Now, the third stage is run. That's when you go back to that physician conversation, or you go back into, not only can you walk, but now you can really run with Aetna, Cigna, United in your area. And now you can get out and we can develop the right relationships. That's running.
Yeah.
Does what I'm saying make sense to you, Jason?
It does. So it's a process. There isn't one definitive approach to every single practice, and it is a process which I would imagine takes some patience,
Yes.
diligence,
Yes.
persistence, and dedication. But what I've seen many times, and I'm sure that you have as well, is that in the practices that possess those traits I just mentioned, you can be wildly successful and help a ton of patients.
Yeah, just go slow. I mean, that whole crawl, walk, run stage can happen in under 1 year. Under 1 year. If you're, see, because think about it like this. Your patients, you see them come through your practice year round, right? Twice a year for hygiene, right? Is that correct? Twice a year for hygiene?
Yep.
So if you can see them twice a year and you know you've gone through your entire patient base with, guess what? Consistent screening, team buy-in, all of the things we just talked about, and you do a really good job, you're going to have more testings and more consults, and you know what to do with that first year. It'll help you flush out what works in your area and what doesn't. Mm-hmm. If you got somebody every day available to you to help you through those processes, you win. You will win. You know?
It seems like you'd have no choice but to win. So, and with that said, I've got no choice, Brett, but to eat. I'm starving like Marvin. So I want to thank everybody for all of your questions. We've run out of time. Brett and the team over at N3Sleep and DreamSleep will follow up with you via email to answer the rest of your questions. I'm sorry, but I have to eat food. So I want to say, Brett, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your experience with everyone here. And I want to remind everyone to please keep an eye out for the email that will have the free CE quiz information. It will also have a recorded video cast that you can view of today's session. So as you're feverishly writing notes, that's good, but you don't absolutely have to. You can keep an eye out for that. And then be sure to subscribe to Dental Sleep Practice. And I just want to say thanks again. Your dedication to all of you attendees, your dedication to your patients, to your practices, to the profession of dental sleep. Brett, your dedication to those professionals is truly admirable. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, DreamSleep. Thank you, N3Sleep, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Jason. We appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity. Cheers. Go get something to eat.